We are here at Live in Mexico City, in the booth, powered by Agora. Facundo, thank you for joining us, head of Latin America for Agora. How's it going, man?
It's been great. This is one of the better conferences. I'm always a big fan. We make sure to hit it. Last year was very productive, and I was like, Nick, we got to come back. So happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, man. Thank you for helping make this booth come to life. Live is sponsored by Agora, built for global institutions moving money at the speed of the internet. You can learn more at agora.finance. Let's just dive right into it. So first off, when we first met and just kind of getting to know your story, tell us a bit about the transition of like what you did at Tether, how that introduced you to stablecoins, deepen that part of your desire to go build, and then how did that eventually lead you into Agora? Give us the story a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I moved around internationally a lot, and so I think that gave me a little bit of a different perspective at the time. I think I was very interested in stablecoins at a time when maybe in crypto people weren't so interested in stablecoins and the more quote unquote fintechy use cases. I think those have always been very compelling for me. I think when you're in the US all the time, the financial system, the rails aren't perfect, but they work enough that it doesn't feel like there's something incredibly broken. And when you move outside the US and you're doing international stuff, et cetera, you really feel those pain points a little bit more. So it's something I always had the early perspective on. And yeah, I joined Tether, spent a couple of years there as country manager for Argentina, doing a lot of the work in LATAM, regulatory, some VC stuff, work with channel partners, the exchanges, people who own the end user. And then, yeah, I'd always known Nick, met Nick through Rob, both of whom are, amazing, great guys.
Dragonfly,
and, yes, Dragon, the one and only.
And they led your original round.
Yes, yeah, the seed.
Shout out Dragonfly.
Amazing people. And Rob sold Nick and Agora to me, which wasn't a particularly hard sell. I'd met Nick in Buenos Aires actually, and I think he was incredibly driven, and he really got what makes stablecoin work, what makes stablecoins work, and what doesn't make them work. And so our mission is just, we want to be basically the best partner for businesses that want to work with a stablecoin. We want to be the number one player in their mind for a whole host of reasons.
Yeah. Tell me about what was that moment, or like, what was the sale there? What was Nick or Rob selling you on that made or continues to make Agora different? Like, what is that? What was that like? What did they say?
I think at the time, the regulation was getting cleared up basically. And this was post Genius, pre-Clarity. And there was an opportunity to bring stablecoins to the US in a new way with a little bit less regulatory risk. And, it's kind of funny. Now we announced a little bit ago that we filed for a charter with the OCC. All roads lead to Rome. Every fintech, eventually does banking.
You said there was a funny story about dad wanting you to.
Yeah, when I joined Tether, I had an offer, not an offer letter, but I was fairly confident I had an in to get a job at JPMorgan, and my dad spent like 25, 30 years there. And I also had the offer from Tether, and I'm pretty sure my dad definitely didn't know what Tether was at the time. And he was like, dude, just take the job at JPMorgan. I was like, Dad, this is going to be way bigger than JPMorgan. So I'm not sure if Jamie would love that one, but yeah. So I was like, oh, I got to go on this.
You can't always trust parental guidance with this stuff. I as well, I think I had just gotten an offer from Coinbase, and I walked into like a family dinner after getting off this call, and my aunt was like, same thing. She's like, oh man, but like, just go work for like Goldman Sachs or like Morgan Stanley. Like what is this like risky? Like, take your career more seriously, would you? But it's you're saying like all of these roads are kind of converging.
Yeah. And so, it's funny because it was like, oh, Dad, I don't want to go work for a bank. This is like old school. And then, now a few years later, I'm at Agora and we're filing to be a bank. So it all comes around, life has a way of its little ironies.
When people see that, why help us understand why that's important? Like, you guys filed for that. Why is that important?
Totally. So we want to be as close to the metal as possible. Like I said a little bit earlier, we want, when people think of stablecoin partners, we want them immediately to think of Agora as the best partner that wants to help you win. And so there's tons of ways we do our business. such that will help that as much as possible. And so one is we want to own our relationship with the regulators, right? So that's why, hey, we want to have this direct filing. We don't want to depend on some counterparty. So if someone says, hey, I want to issue a stable coin with Agora, or I want to use AUSD, or a whole host of other things that they're going to be able to do with us in the future, we want them to understand, hey, we don't depend on some other business with their own license and their own thing. You're coming direct to us and we're direct on the metal.
Amazing. What does that give? So like, the before and after, like what would have to happen if you weren't on the metal that a builder or someone using AUSD would have to go?
It's just, there's a second, there's another relationship, pretty much everyone in crypto uses lead. In the fintech world, it's usually Column, and these are great businesses. They're great partners and they're awesome. But I think for us, we want to go direct to the regulator, and we want that when someone works with Agora, they know, hey, I don't depend on somebody else's terms of service. Right. We don't want, a Silicon Valley Bank situation or something like that where, hey, you're working with a company and you think everything is fine, but this company itself has dependencies on others. And so we want our regulatory relationship to be super clear there.
Yeah. It's a big moment for AUSD. And I think that the market positioning, from what it seems like, you guys are really starting to find a place where this credibly neutral story really becomes powerful, as we've seen other issuers or other stablecoin companies start to do so many things or be acquired by others who are doing so many things. I think this angle for you guys is really interesting. Speak a little bit about the role of AUSD and how it's maybe different or credibly neutral, and why that's key for you guys.
I think our number one thing, and we talk about this all the time, is we want our partners to win. Right. We want our partners to say, hey, we've had an amazing business. We've grown a ton. We've had all these new products, and Agora was the perfect partner for that. And so that's why we, haven't really gone into other categories. There's a few product things we're doing. We don't really want to make money on those. We're always kind of trying to add utility to AUSD for our partners. But that's where, hey, we'll let other people go direct to users. We'll let other people do other businesses. And our plan is not to say, hey, we're going to have a blockchain and we're going to have an exchange and we're going to have, this, that, other lines of business. We think that you can have an ecosystem that rewards each other. And we think there's more than enough room in the industry for multiple different businesses. I think other businesses, some of the other prominent issuers, a lot of respect to them and the business they've built, but they're expanding across a bunch of different categories. And I think as a partner, when you're working with them, that's a question that needs to come up in strategic conversations. Hey, these people have another line of business that competes with our core business. Is this the right partner for us? And our view is, probably not, and that we can be a better partner for them.
Yeah. When you think of, and maybe specifically to Latin America and the region of the world that you're covering, how is AUSD showing up in that part of the world? What opportunities do you see there?
Yeah, so I think I would say there's 2 or 3 opportunities, and I've always been kind of a more fintech crypto guy where, like I was saying before, always the stable coins were very interesting to me immediately. I think you're going to start to see non-USD FX. There's been a little bit of regulatory lag there, but we're very excited about some of the partnerships we have. We have a partnership with Mento that we're very excited about for synthetic FX. And then we're starting to have conversations with a bunch of the real on the rails stablecoins in LATAM. I think they're still waiting for a last level of regulatory unlock so that some of their distribution partners in those different regions or those different countries can feel really comfortable working with them. Once that happens, I think there's going to be a whole new flavor of things that unlock in those regions, and much more capillarity direct all the way down, right? So you'll have a lot more people that will start paying in stable coins at some of these local places because, hey, I can pay with an Argentine peso stable coin, a Brazilian real stable coin, et cetera. And so we're very excited about that and empowering those other issuers.
For those who don't know Mento, how would you describe that business and the relationship to AUSD there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Mento does synthetic FX. So they basically just hold dollar-denominated stablecoins. They hold a lot of AUSD. They've been a great partner with us since we started working with them, and I think the team has a very interesting vision. And so what they do is they hold US dollar stablecoins, and then they hedge out such that they can create synthetic, non-USD stablecoins. And so we think that there will be an interplay between that and then the stablecoins that do have direct on the metal, because those will be able to go down directly to payment rails. And so that's a way of kind of getting non-USD FX up. a little bit quicker than if you wait for full regulatory approval, et cetera.
Is this type of partnerships one where it's like, now that you have this in place, that is kind of functionally there, or are you trying to partner with like others like Mento? Is this like a partnership
I think
strategy?
you're always happy to partner with a bunch of people.
I don't know if there are many
I think for synthetic FX, there's not that many. I think what we're excited about that is kind of the different use cases that this expands, right? So this is a little bit of what I was talking earlier. There's a few other things that we're doing. We mostly want to leave other parts of, the industry to other businesses that are partners with us. This is one where I think by partnering with people, we can empower both ourselves and their business. And it's something where, hey, if a neobank wants to offer, or, a business bank wants to offer non-USD stablecoins, hey, Agora just got a lot more powerful because we have this close relationship with Mento, which will allow a lot of things for then end underlying users, right? So that's always the way we're thinking about it. I think another thing that's going to be really, really big is globalization of interest rates. I think this one has flown a little bit under the radar for people, and then under collateralized lending, which is, normal lending.
Globalization of interest rates, break that down a little bit in terms of the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in the US, interest rates are usually a little bit lower than globally. And then in the rest of the world, usually they're a little bit higher, particularly in areas where crypto has a lot of adoption, or stablecoins have a lot of adoption, Argentina, Venezuela, Brazil, et cetera. These are places where interest rates are usually systemically a little bit higher.
Yeah.
And so there's an interplay there where if you're doing collateralized lending, say against BTC, or say, for example, something that's very common in Argentina is you'll hold dollars and take a loan out against those dollars as collateral and then spend the pesos that you get from that.
Yep.
And so I think those use cases will start to be, as some of the friction and the infrastructure gets a little bit better, I think that will start to be an incredibly compelling use case, particularly because the interest rates will be so much more attractive than locally. And then as well on the deposit side, maybe a little bit less sexy, but still super interesting, and economically incredibly interesting for the end users. I think that the interest rates will always be a little bit higher, and you'll have less risk, right? If I'm lending in a Brazilian, if I'm lending out my dollars in a Brazilian market, I have Brazilian bank risk, right? Whereas if I just, hold, a stable coin and then I receive some form of rewards, or I'm in an earn program, I'm in a vault, et cetera, hey, maybe I feel that I have less risk, or I have a better risk return. I do think there you want to be careful about the risk return. And there have been some things. We always think about building a business for 10 or 20 years and not for 2 or 3 years. Yep. And so one thing we've kind of shied away from is looping. We haven't really tried to inflate market cap with looping or any of that stuff, which I know can be super attractive for an issuer because you can make the number go a lot higher. But we want to really have kind of a more sustainable market cap and sustainable growth.
Are there any other pitfalls that you, as an issuer, are like really careful not to fall down? Like looping is a really good example. Are there any other like common pitfalls or key things that you see Agora strategically not doing that seems really important?
I think one kind of beyond the issuers, and we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, is I think stablecoins and crypto is fundamentally about the globalization and internet capital markets. And so I think you should have a globally distributed team because there will be use cases or there will be perspectives you get from an international team that you don't get if you're all in New York or all in San Francisco. And so I've kind of long critiqued the, hey, you're a San Francisco team backed by San Francisco VCs with an American founder that's lived in the US, and maybe you are brilliant and you can have an amazing use case, but then you really do need to make if that's you, I think you need to make an effort to find an international perspective. I think some companies have managed to be in the US, have US investors, US team, and have an international perspective. And those teams have done very well. And I think some teams have gone really into the US, and I think that'll start to show over time.
Last question. What did you learn from Tether's go-to-market in terms of like doing that? What, from my perspective, was extremely well, like a very localized, very targeted, like boots on the ground across the world. Like it seemed like they really were thoughtful around that. What was like the key learning there, or one of the either that specifically or other things that you felt like that part of your journey is helping you bring into Agora now?
Yeah, I think there's a ton there. I think the first thing is, Tether was early. Shout out to Paulo, Giancarlo, the rest of the team, really brilliant guys, very, very dedicated. Few times have I met teams that are, that driven and laser focused. I think what I would say is like, there's this essay I read a long time ago, which is when you're building this kind of product, you have to kind of call your shot about what you think the world is going to look like 2 to 3 years from now, and not build for today, but build for 2 to 3 years from now. I think that's a lot of what we're doing at Agora, and that's a lot of why I joined Agora is, hey, there's things that we're looking at 2 to 3 years from now that we think they're going to happen, that we can be best positioned to exploit and be the best partner for the companies that are going to build for use cases that don't necessarily exist today or are still not streamlined or easy enough to use today to where they're good enough. I think we're starting to get there. We're starting to see account abstraction, managed wallets, et cetera, get really, really good, where now you're starting to see business banking and you're starting to see this wave of neobanks. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. I think that's a lot of what we've built for. I think the last thing I would say is localized. And so we have a totally international team. We have Constantine and Briege in Europe and the UK. We have Patrick over in Asia, myself in LATAM. Nick has always gone super international. And so we believe in working with non-US businesses and being their US leg. There's a lot of relationships that we can bring to bear there. And like I said, we always want to make our partners win. And so if that's, hey, we'll tag somebody in, we'll bring in another partner from another part of the business, like I said, with Mento, like we've done with Accountable. There's a lot of these different partnerships that we've done where it's not necessarily about what's going to happen right away, but it's about, hey, if we combine, Mento and Agora and this other business, that's going to be amazing. That's going to really empower partners that want, USD stables, but also non-USD stables in their apps. Or, with Accountable, hey, that's really going to empower a whole series of businesses that need things from them, but also need a stablecoin that's aligned. So that's always kind of been our perspective, building for what's going to come. And then, like I said, kind of ruthlessly saying, how can we be the best partner for other companies?
Perfect place to end. This was fun. I know it goes by quick.
Super great. Always great to chat. Big fan of the show. First time calling in, sitting in. Thank you for having me.
You got it, man. That was our exclusive live conversation with Facundo, head of Latin America at Agora. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with another great conversation. See you soon.